Welcome everyone to our Water Services Committee meeting on August 7th, 9 a.m. We'll call the meeting to order if that's okay. We do not need to do a roll call. Emma here is able to ascertain who's here. Gary and I, for directors, are here in person. We have staff here, etc. So I think we're ready to roll. So with that in mind, I'll call the meeting to order at 9 o'clock. And I would like to state that we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous whose traditional lands we are meeting today. So with that in mind, before we adopt the agenda, I am not monitoring chat, so we'll do our best.
I can.
Oh, okay, Gary's going to. So we have chat, raise hands. Emma's going to monitor hand raises as well as myself. So I think we should be able to get a fair amount of communication going. So with that, I'd like to have someone to move the adoption of the agenda.
There's a question. Could Chris mute, please? Oh, I guess he's muted.
We okay?
Yep, it's good.
Okay, good. All right. So, yes, so we have staff in person and online as well. So we have a motion, Jackman, as seconder for the agenda. I'm sure there is. There is. Thank you. Any additions? Anything anyone would like to add to the conversation today? All right, seeing none. Is there any opposition to the agenda? Seeing none, we have an agenda. We have the receipt of the minutes. Are there any comments anyone would like to make prior to these going to the August board meeting? Seeing none here or there, we'll carry on. We're moving on to item number 3, which is the 2024, water and wastewater acquisition policy. We have Chris online. So Chris Gainham, Chris, why don't you take it away, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, good to be here. I am having a few problems with my video this morning, so I can see you. Unfortunately, you can't see me. Yeah, I'm very pleased to present the acquisition policy that goes hand in hand with the plan that was recently approved. The policy, as you've read in the report, lines up very well with the plan. It gives us a formal basis to move forward for system acquisition as the moratorium is lifted. I think the plan the policy will give us a good framework to work from, clear, concise, and short. Certainly here to answer any questions that the committee members have on the plan.
All right, thanks, Chris. So after extensive discussion, fantastic discussion at our last meeting 2 months ago, we have had a chance to take a look at this. So we'll open the floor for any further questions, comments. Yes, go ahead, Director Vandenberg.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Chris, so from 2 months ago, has anything in these reports really changed in your estimation from today 2 months ago?
Chris?
Yes, through the chair. No, I don't believe so. We've stayed quite steady with things. Of course, the Water Services Committee had comments on the plan. Up until now, the policy essentially mirrors that plan, contains less details, just the meat and potatoes, so to speak, of the I guess as we acquire a new system. So no, I believe that the new policies been written considering all those comments and the changes that were made in the plan. And that's being reflected in the policy. So I think the policy document, as you see it in front of you, really represents that collection of input up until now.
Supplemental? Thank you.
No.
Director Cunningham?
Yes, I just mentioning it. Maybe we might want to change the title slightly. Maybe we put the word system in there because I really don't want to acquire any wastewater from anybody.
If I may
Go ahead.
We have laid that out in our plan, in our adopted plan, basis for it to include wastewater facilities. Sorry, Director Chapman?
If I might, the agenda heading doesn't say system, the policy clearly.
The policy does.
I know.
So we're good. Thanks very much.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Seeing none, I'll ask for no more comment. Yes, Director Jackman.
I think we're ready to adopt, and I will move the staff recommendation, but I do have one comment for future consideration.
Okay, so it's moved. Do we have a seconder? I'm sure we do. Yeah, we got tons of them. Excellent. So it's moved and seconded. And mover, would you like to speak or make a comment, please?
Just, reading this over and over, something always arises. Future considerations, if you don't get into any kind of misunderstanding with new groups coming in. It states, page 16 of 50 on the agenda, new services must be financially independent. That's not true. None of our services are financially independent. We have with A103 and water services fee and allocation that may fluctuate from year to year of senior staff and some of our overhead costs. We are interdependent between all of our water systems. It doesn't talk about that at all. I mean, our financial system is pretty complex, but you can't say that these services are independent to the extent that, say, some of our other services might be. I don't know what on a small system potential concern that could be, maybe very low, but we know in Arrow Creek, it's a very large concern that, what is the fee that's being contributed through the environmental services fee. So we're not independent. At some point when we revisit this, we may have to think about it. That'll become a challenge or be challenged. That they are essentially independent in their operations, capital management, asset management, yet they are. I don't want to put the words in now, but it's something to think of down the road.
Okay, thanks. All right. Since we're not going to change the words right now, let's get this done and then we can talk about that when the first group
Chair.
applies and we can say to them.
Oh, sorry, Chair. Watson is in chat to speak.
Oh, okay. So yes, so we can explain to them what financially independent exactly means as we're in deep conversation with them about acquisition. Go ahead, Director Watson.
I just want to highlight that it's an important note to make that it's self-funding as much as possible. And I get Director Jackman's point, but I think when we're looking at establishing services, part of the reason why we have a moratorium or we had one for so long is because they're very expensive and the ability to fund them is very difficult. So I don't want to, I think getting the word and the language correct or articulate is important. I would think self-funding, basically indicating that these services are paid for by the people receiving them. And the environmental services fee falls in that gray area, grants fall in that gray area. And if we get into rural administration support, we have a few areas, but it is important to acknowledge that the reason why we had that moratorium was the cost implications and the capacity implications. So yeah, I guess that's all.
Yeah, no, that's good. Newly will just make a closing comment on this.
I initially didn't want to comment on it since the chair said we won't comment it, but I agree with your statement, Director Watson. I think the intent here was to state that, as you said, that they are financially independent. They pay for everything they receive, including the services they pay for through A103, right? It's a fee for service. You're right, there's gray areas there, and we will think if there is a way of better expressing that than saying financially independent. We will consider that in future amendments that I know we will have.
Thank you. So thanks for that and clarifying it. And as with all the conversations around this policy, we can see that the first group that comes forward, it's going to be a very interesting process, seeing if we can incorporate them into one of our services. So seeing no further hands, etc., I'll call the question. Is there any opposition? Seeing Chris, did you want to? Okay. Seeing none,
No.
we will. Oh, yes, go ahead, Chris.
Through the chair, I was just going to say, no, I'm good. It's been good of me taking notes on the comments back and forth, but I'm good.
Thanks very much. All right, so it's deemed passed. It will go to the board. So, and yeah, so let's just leave it well enough alone right now. Okay, number 4. This will be you again, Chris. The Creston Valley Alternative Water Source Feasibility Study. Take it away, Chris. An update for us.
Through the chair, yes, I'm happy to provide a verbal project update for the Creston Valley Alternative Water Supply Feasibility Study. So just as a summary, the water supply feasibility study aims to identify a long-term water solution for agriculture in the region. The initiative is critical for securing a sustainable water supply and reducing pressure on the Arrow Creek water system and the Goat River Basin, especially considering the future impacts of climate change. The project, funded primarily through the Ministry of Agriculture's Investment in Agriculture Foundation Agricultural Water Supply Infrastructure Program, also has additional support from the Community Development Fund. The geographic area that we're looking at covers from Duck Creek to the U.S. border. The overall goal of the study is to forecast water needs, assess potential new water sources, and evaluate the feasibility of infrastructure solutions to service agricultural water supply needs. We've engaged and awarded the project to Associated Engineering with a contract value of $97,850. The team led by Matt Losey, who's the project manager, is currently collecting and reviewing data, including existing reports on water supply and demand. And we are working closely with stakeholders such as the Akinuki, the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Water, Lands and Resource Stewardship, and local water purveyors throughout the project. Recently had an update from Associated Engineering, noting that the background review has been completed and that a memo is being prepared to outline the available information, identify gaps and next steps in the project. They have suggested a shift in focus from solely identifying future water sources to mapping water service areas and assessing high-level water demands in the Creston Valley. The adjustments based on the understanding that the Kootenay River is the most viable future water supply source, with other sources being limited or restricted by stakeholder concerns for the most part. The team will continue gathering necessary reports and background information, including those from the Yakinuki Band, subject to an information sharing agreement which was recently signed with them. Once the memo is complete, we'll discuss the findings and recommendations for the next steps with all relevant stakeholders. Just a reminder on budget, the total budget for the project is $100,000 with $75,000 coming from that IAF grant and $25,000 coming from the Community Development Fund. The project aligns with the RDCK strategic primarily in fostering reconciliation with Indigenous communities and promoting environmental stewardship and readiness for climate change. The is a vital step towards ensuring that the Creston Valley's agricultural future and resilience against water shortages are properly planned for. We are committed to a thorough analysis and inclusive stakeholder engagement throughout the project to achieve a sustainable solution. And we are also looking forward to gathering the necessary information for the next phase of grant availability under this stream. Thank you. Certainly here and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Chris. I'll just scan we've got 1, 2, okay, Director Jackman, Director Vandenberg. Go ahead, Director Jackman.
Thank you, through the chair to Chris. I guess first, all these consultants know what our budgets are, and our budget's 100,000, and their first quote comes in just shy of $98,000, which means we're capped out from the beginning. But when you mention recommendation that we go the next step to mapping water service areas and demands, first question, I guess, is that already part of the scope of the terms of this contract, or is that going to be an additional cost? And would that be in-house, or would that be consultant?
Go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, I did mention the verbal update that Associated Engineering had recommended a shift from, kind of further analysis of water sources. So maybe a bit of spinning our wheels, looking at different water sources when we know that the Kootenay River is the very likely source. So rather of a shift in scope within the budget as it stands.
Supplemental?
Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
So it doesn't quite answer the question. I will say I agree that we not spend too much time thinking about could the lower growth provide more water? It cannot. And we know duck can provide more water from time to time, but there's severe worries about high level snow, early melt, sort of the timing of that flow. And we know that the one irrigation district for the conveyance agreement would have denied their application for additional water licensing on duck. So I agree with that shift. My question was, is this going to be more money? This shift in scope, have they identified now the mapping will cost, they'll say $10,000 on one part of not thinking about goat or duck, but they want $40,000 to map. That's the question. Is there any indication of additional charge? And or if there's mapping to be done, would we do it in-house or through this consultant? Because I know there's a lot of little water systems and eventually it would be nice to have all that data. But are we seeing a shift in cost? Because we have no contingency. We got $2,000 in the key right now.
Yeah,
Through the chair, there's no scope change, and there's no change in costs at this time for this work.
Sure, that is a scope change to shift the initial investigation to existing services and demand from potential sources. I just want reassurance that the consultant's thinking this is not a change in cost.
So there was, if I may through the chair, there was no discussion about a change order. The scope is somewhat loose, is actually developed as we do the stakeholder feedback. So it had to intentionally be fairly wide open in regards to specific scope of the work. It's not like in most RFPs where we have a very defined scope. This was intentionally open to develop it as we get feedback, as we gain more information from all stakeholders, and then we zoom into the actual development of the study. When we have identified all users, all potential sources, I guess what Chris is saying, we can simplify, so in a way reduce the scope by focusing in on the most likely source, be the river or wells on the flats that ultimately draw from the river. So I would see, if anything, it frees up space for additional work on other components of the work. But like I said, the scope of the study itself was not a clear, very defined box. It had to be open in order to allow for feedback that we get from stakeholders.
Thank you. So more to come on that front, and there's no sense. I mean,
Would we be missing an opportunity? Lakeview Arrow Creek, 400 or 500 foot deep well, pumping up to a balancing reservoir north of Creston to provide this and that. I mean, those kind of options, in my mind, require, I agree, we're not gonna find surface water sources, we're not gonna get duck, we're not gonna get logo. But there may be something else. There's some highly productive deep wells just on the east shore, highly productive. So those are totally out of scope now. That a deep well at reasonably high elevation now, collecting enough groundwater to pump into a balancing reservoir to serve system needs, because we're talking untreated water. So those are out of scope. Is it yes, the question, and or there's no cost savings and no cost extra. So you said not.
Actually, that's the type of feedback I am hoping to get from meetings with all stakeholders. It's local information that may not be commonly known from existing mapping or water source data that's out there. So we're hoping to get that. As the director I think knows, I struggle a little bit in regards to timing to meet with all directors and band council in a single meeting because of the timing and their summer break. So unfortunately, whatever feedback you are providing us will be a little bit later in the study than I had hoped for. But generally speaking, that's what we hope to get. That's what we hope to get specific information from the agricultural members in the community, from the small water systems in the community, and from the political level.
Great. Is there anything else, Chris, you'd like to add?
Through the chair, no, just taking notes and thank Director Jackman for the comment.
Great. And so, there'll be, obviously, this a process of reaching out and talking to people about possible solutions. Excellent. Is there anything else? I don't see anything else you did. I hear something in the background. Who is it? Yeah, Director Vandenberg. Go ahead, please.
Great, thank you, and through the chair. Just 2 points for clarity. Chris, you had mentioned in your dissertation the information agreement with Yakanuki has been signed. I remember us talking about the contents of that. Can I get a reminder of where that document, that agreement lies? So that I have an understanding as to what is understood between the 2 stakeholders and perhaps more, is my first question. The second one is around...
Kelly, so let's answer the first question. I don't like run-on question, then we all forget. Go ahead, Chris or Uli. Chris.
Yes, through the chair, the information sharing agreement really focuses on the environmental and water related information that one of the Yakanuki staff members, a hydrologist, is currently collecting on the Goat River. So we're talking flow and level hydrological data from the Goat River, temperature, and various other kind of environmental parameters that are being collected. So pretty straightforward as far as what information will be provided and what will be required. Yes.
Chris, I believe the question was if that agreement is signed now or not. Is that correct?
Through the chair, through the chair, that agreement signed.
And supplemental to Mr. Chair.
Yes, no, go ahead.
Yes, if that agreement is signed, is there a copy of that available for us for review?
Through the chair, I don't see a problem with providing a copy to the Water Services Committee. We can certainly do that.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I have one final clarity.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. Crescent Valley Services, we had a group that presented to us, I don't know, 3, maybe 4 months ago. It was a very interesting presentation, and it spoke, water sustainability planning was the topic, and my question is around, and it sounds like it's something that ought to be worked with the province in terms of a registration probably more support than anything, is the water sustainability planning, is it parallel to or in line with this work on this subject?
Through the chair, I mean, one of the, I guess, guiding tenets of our work here is water sustainability for now and for future agriculture users in the Crescent Valley. So certainly it is.
Right. And so is there a formal notification, if you will, and perhaps we've already done this, and I apologize, formal notification that we are indeed in action with water sustainability planning, notification to the province on this work? Is that in queue? Has that already occurred?
Through the chair, yeah, we are. Two provincial ministries are our main partners in the project, so we are in close contact with them regarding the scope and the theme of the study, which is really pinned on water sustainability planning. So yes, that's correct, and we are in contact with them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Director Watson.
Director Watson, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair to Chris, can I just clarify who signed the letter? And I know the MOU is different with LKB than what this is, but if the letter was signed by Chief and Council, was that put through the board, or is this a staff to staff letter? And yes, please, if we can get a copy of it, please.
Yeah, through the chair, maybe I'll defer to Eileen if she recalls this. My memory is a little foggy. I know Mike signed on our side. Then I did as well.
Yeah, I mean, just checking on it here.
So, are we talking about the agreement with the local event?
Correct.
I believe so. The data sharing agreement?
Yeah, I believe I might have signed that. The agreement, if I may through the purpose of the agreement is simply to protect some of the data that were unpublished at the time. So it is part of I think master's work, and some of it had been unpublished or maybe protected data. For that reason, we suggested to have an agreement that protects the source of the data from a unauthorized third-party use of the data. And that is all it is about. It has nothing to do further with any agreements with a band. It is solely about protecting the data for the owner in regards to third-party use of certain parts of the data. Most of it actually will be published anyhow relatively soon as part of the master's work. I understand what I've heard, but that was the only reason where we said anytime we get data from a third party, they come and say, oh, and by the way, you can only do this with this data. And here we were actually saying, do you want something like this? And have an informal small agreement to protect the data from a third-party use that is unauthorized. It is generally in the industry a normal thing that you go to the owner of the data and say, are you okay using your data for this type of work? And so that's all we wanted to ensure as part of this.
Clemental?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem on that. What I want to do is reiterate what we did. So we have several initiatives that are crossing different services and different staff. So I'm just going to reiterate what was said at sustainability when we talked about the watershed governance initiative and the water sustainability plan specifically with Yakinuki, so that water services staff knows where this question is coming from. I have no problem with a staff to staff letter identifying data and how it's cared for and respected and whatnot. That's totally understandable. Please do send us a copy though. I think it's important for us to understand because there are many other conversations occurring between elected officials, Yakinuki, as well as staff and other departments and Yakinuki. And there's some disparity between those discussions. So I'm not saying this letter is going to do that, but it's really helpful if we're all in the loop to understand what has been committed to. So the request at the Sustainability Committee, when it came to the sustainability plan, which obviously is connected to this, but a different project, was that any communications between chief and council also involves elected officials, and that there is no disparity between staff and elected officials or staff and chief and council without the appropriate parties on the other end. So that's why I was asking the letter who signed it and where did it come from. Your explanation, Uli, was elaborate and perfect. No problem. It's data protection. I understand that. But please do send it to us so that we're aware. We also have Kootenay Lake Partnership conversations, which are very detailed at this time. And so the more we understand what RDCK is committing to, the more it helps us as elected officials be clear about what we understand. So I think that the summary there is that RDCK is one entity to many, and yet we are hundreds of people doing different things. So it's just about communication and making sure we all know what has been committed to, what's been said, and that we're aligned with that. So I hope that helps explain why I'm asking. And it's more so in the sustainability plan and kind of value statements where chief and council are involved that we need to be involved in as well. I hope that helps explain it.
Just briefly, if I may, through the chair. Yes, it's general practice. Anything that goes to the political level is signed by the political level and vice versa. So I don't recall anything in the last years where we have letters directed from staff to other councils or vice versa.
Sure, you have Vandenberg and then myself again, if I might.
And sorry,
Thanks very much. Yeah, go ahead, please, Director.
and just to circle on that, I appreciate that, Uli. But if we can receive those correspondences, just so we're aware of them. And I do understand staff understands the appropriate connection. So thank you for that.
Okay, so Director Vandenberg.
Thank you through the chair. Amy actually summed it up quite nicely for the point I wanted to make. In short, I just want to ensure that we have access to that data. We're not third party. That's why the importance of that, the contents of that agreement is necessary for us to be able to carry on our conversations whenever necessary.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you for clarifying the concern here, and I don't remember every section in there. I'm just not clear what us means. Is us general public? Is us the political level? Is us the staff level? And like I said, different data may be shared at different levels as part of that agreement. How about we start sending out that agreement, and then we can have further discussion in a future meeting what that means in regards to data sharing.
Excellent. Okay, Director Vandenberg, is there anything else?
No, I'm good. Thank you very much.
Director Jackman.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe a little further to Chair Watson's point again, because different senior staff involved in different committees. In addition to a board desire to ensure that chief and council conversations and or correspondence involve a board director, which, you know, you've been following, I thought it was fairly clear, and I see Stuart's not on this call, the board received briefing notes on staff to staff interactions on these issues with Port Kootenay Band, because there is so much overlap between the different initiatives. So I thought we had requested that we get a briefing note. The briefing note may or may not have an agreement like your one you're talking about as an attachment. But again, just to raise board's general awareness of what's happening where, the interrelationship. Point that maybe will be best brought up with CAO, either at agenda prep this afternoon or at some other time. But the briefing note in my mind would be one paragraph that we are aware that band administrator has Heather Suddy has returned or signed an agreement on this, or that there was a request for something in April, still outstanding, we've done an additional request. Not to be a huge burden, but for us to understand where we're at, so that when we get into conversation, we're not starting at the wrong point with these conversations.
What I'm going to suggest is that this is not a water services committee conversation. It's a bigger issue, and so the executive can take on exactly what staff to staff things get sent to the board for their understanding. And so, since you're meeting this afternoon and you want to make that just to start the conversation with Stuart and senior management, that's a great thing. I think we'll just leave it at that for now. That's okay. So, is there anything else on this water source feasibility study verbal report from Chris? And anything in closing, Chris, you'd like to say? Thank you for that.
Yeah, through the chair, no, nothing further from me.
Great. So thanks, and the executive can contemplate that big question of what we receive at the political level. And with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 5. And this is Alex's report. So Alex, take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, good morning, everyone. This report is to provide an update to the committee.
There's background noise. Maybe Chris, are you on? Okay, let's try again. Go ahead, Alex.
The intent of this report is to provide the committee some O&M operation and maintenance items and capital project updates in each one of the systems. I'm not going to go through this line by line, but I will open up the floor to any questions, any points that the directors might find interesting.
Thank you, Alex. And we're scanning. Yes, I see one hand up, so we'll go to Director Graham. Please go ahead, Director Graham.
Thank you. So through the chair, just one thing to staff, just concerning the Balfour water system. Just looking for clarity on the development for well number 2. I know this is the development up at the Balfour Golf Course, but it's just saying that the non-viable well was decommissioned. Like, are we getting 2 wells on this system out of that development, or are we getting 1?
Yeah, so through the chair, there are 2 wells. There were 3 wells drilled. The first one was deemed productive. The second well had some water quality issues and was deemed non-viable. And then there's a third well that was drilled that was further developed and deemed viable. So the second well, if you go in chronological order, has been decommissioned. So there are still 2 wells, but 3 wells were drilled.
Supplemental? Thumbs up. Okay, great. Director Weatherhead.
Thank you. Sorry. Just 2 questions on the Burton water system, if I may, through the chair to staff. First off, on the roof for the pump house, you're awaiting quotes on that, and I just want to check in that we have local contractors quoting on that, hopefully, just to save a little bit of cash. And then my second question is just around that GARP virus, just the wording it being within 300 meters setback from a source of probable viral contamination. And I was just curious about that. I've seen that before, and I keep meaning to ask, would that just be from someone's septic field in that part of the neighborhood?
Question. Go ahead, Alex.
Sure. Through the chair, yes, local contractors are being approached for the quotes on the roof replacement of the Burton pump house. And to follow up, the GARP assessment, so septic fields will be one source of probable viral contamination. There are other sources of probable viral contamination, so we consider everything. I think if you were to, if you were to look at the actual GARP assessment, which is posted on the website under the Burton Water System webpage, you'll see a map, and it does have the 300-meter radius outlined. So we consider everything that's within that 300-meter radius.
Great.
Thank you.
I'll have a
Okay.
I'll check that out. Thank you.
Great. Lower your hand there, please, while you're there. That way the chair gets less. Director Popoff, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on the South Lacan. I think everybody is aware in the village that there is aged materials and distribution system and has likely significant leakage on that. The question would be, have we identified the leakages, or are there any plans to repair them?
Yeah, through the chair. So we have completed leak detection work in South Lacan, and we have identified one section. It's essentially a valve box that's no longer used that we are planning to reconfigure and remedy any leakage. So yes, there has been leak detection work done, and what leaks have been identified, they're planned to be repaired.
Thank you. Supplemental?
No, thanks. And the reason for that question is because we've got filters there, and they're pretty costly to replace with leakage that kind of shortens the time period that they're useful. But anyways, thank you for the report.
All righty. Seeing no further hands, comments, chats, verbal, we're going to move on to item number 6, which is the Sanka Northern Properties Service Establishment Bylaw, and a verbal report from Manager Will Hooley. Go ahead, please.
Totally forgot about that one. What's there to update? We are proposing to go to the third reading of the bylaw as the next step, as a result of lack of progress in regards to alternative water sources securement through the property owners to the north. So we are taking that next step that is a long time coming and in preparation. I think we had a relatively long period of communication with the property owners trying to resolve the issue without any visible results. Therefore, we take that next step as directed or discussed previously with the advisory committee in that process.
Thank you. And there is a comment. Yes, Director Jackman, please go
Just
ahead.
to confirm the subsequent steps, so does that go to the Controller of Water, or does that go to Ministry of Municipal Affairs for vetting, or both? And then we'll wait and see what they say.
Through the chair, it definitely goes to Ministry of Municipal Affairs to approve the required amendment of the establishment bylaw service area. They may include the water controller in regards to this for more technical advice on that, but they may as well potentially rule simply based on the communication to date that we will submit as part of that, if this is a reasonable or not reasonable approach that we are taking. So I'm a bit uncertain what their process is.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to item number 7, which is the summary of utility services financial statements, and it's there for your information, tracking the budgets of all the systems. There could be a question and of course you can always just directly talk to staff, but Director Weatherhead, I see your hand there. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I just had one question, but on the S254 water utility for folk here. I was just curious about the contracted services for June being $5,815 and wondered if it has some relation to the almost $2,000 spent on chemicals, and what I'm just curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Through the chair. The contracted services is for the service agreement that we have with a local O&M service provider there. So it has nothing to do with the chemicals. They're completely separate of each other.
Thank you. And the chemicals is that a purchase for the whole year? That seems like a lot of chemicals.
We do purchase throughout the year. So it is, for folk here, that would be primarily the sodium hypochlorite that's used in the system.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, and you can lower your hand. Any other comments on the statements? All right, well, seeing none, then we will now call for public time at 9:45 a.m. And I see Observer, but we'll pause for a moment just to see if Observer wants to ask anything. Seeing nothing. Prior to asking for a motion to adjourn, is there any comments anyone would like to make?
Chair.
Anything that popped into the mind? Yes, there you go. Director Watson, please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, not on the agenda, just an FYI for our fellow directors. Between CAO Horn and I, we're both on about day 20 of working straight with the fires. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew Stuart was in the EOC late last night while Dan was in the public meeting in Silverton. I attended the meeting online. But do bear with us. I noted this morning that I completely forgot we have regular meetings as well. And so this is the first meeting ever in 12 years. I did not read the materials. But just wanted to make sure I was to let you know why Stuart was not at this meeting. And I'm doing my best to sleep in between. So there's a few of us that are well beyond our capacity right now. And I just wanted the committee members to know that.
Well, thank you very much. And I suppose the chair was remiss in not acknowledging the intensity of what's been going on the last month. So thanks for saying that, Chair. And our thoughts are with everyone, I'm sure. And with that in mind, prior to adjournment and public time, no one coming forward, is there anything else any director would like to say in response to what Director and Chair Watson shared?
Yeah, Director Popoff.
Yes, go ahead, Director Popoff.
Yeah, very simple. Ditto to what Director Watson has said. The Slocan Valley complex of fires has been taking up a lot of my time, and I've attended every public meeting. I was virtually on the one in New Denver, or Silverton, I should say. So, yeah, and a lot of the residents are pretty upset about what's happening. Being evacuated for 2 or 3 days is kind of acceptable, but 2-3 weeks, that is really, tough on the residents. So my sympathy goes out to the residents of Area H and actually Area D too also.
Well, thanks for that. And it's and staff and everything. I don't know what else to say. So it's been said. Yeah,
just as one comment, you may be aware of anyhow. So we have, meanwhile, not only the trained staff in the EOC, but as well other resources pulled in order to have that rotation over that longer period of time in the midst of vacation period on top of that. And so you will see likely, I just speak from my side, thinner agendas or deferred items on some or the other matter, and definitely on the resource recovery side where we have significant staff in the EOC, and I'm sure that's in other departments similarly.
Right, that's a very good point. So patience, everyone, as we deal with some things and just try and get through the summer for sure. So thanks to staff, thanks to everyone. And no sense belaboring it. We got people to get back to work. So anyway, thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, why don't we motion to adjourn? It's moved, it's seconded, and I did public. I know. I begged people to talk, but they wouldn't. So thanks everyone, and we'll see you next week. Take care. Bye bye. Yeah, you were. I was loose.